Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the founder of The Rental Secrets, an author and a real estate consultant based in Dallas, Texas. None other than Mr. Justin Pogue.
Yes, very glad to be here. Thanks, Daniel.
Welcome, Mr. Justin, in a Book 101 review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, so my name is Justin Pogue, author and real estate consultant based in Dallas. My path to real estate was not typical. Actually, went to graduate school for management consulting and graduated into the .com bubble. And many of your listeners may resonate with them, as some of them may have graduated into the COVID situation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that did not end up working out for me. And my mother, who had been a real estate agent back in the 80s, she was interested in investing in real estate, and she just asked me if I would just come along and look at one property with her, and then one led to another, and that was what prompted my entry into real estate investing. But the book actually came a little bit later, as I was between real estate investing gigs, and someone suggested that I write a book. And I went to the bookstore and I was looking at that, and I saw books for everyone in real estate except for the people in the U.S. who paid $500 billion a year in rent. And I thought maybe somebody should be talking to them. And that was where my book was born.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Justin. Thank you. Keep up the good work. So let's start with the mindset. What is the most limiting belief or misconception renters have that keeps them from negotiating better terms or finding better value?
They actually don't think they can. They think they're at the mercy of landlords. And what they don't understand is that the value of the building is based on the rent that they're actually paying. And there are several levers that renters have that they can pull to actually negotiate with the landlords. But as in with most education, people are not actually trained in financial matters of money and negotiation. So they don't think they have that power, but the reality is they really do.
Indeed. So, Mr. Justin, beyond just searching listings, what does it look like to have a truly proactive and strategic hunt for an apartment? What are the non-obvious places to look or people to talk to?
So most people, they will go to an apartment complex and they'll take the tour with the listing agent, and that'll be it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're ignoring two vital sources of information. The first source is their potential future neighbors. Talking to the people you might live next to, those folks don't have any stake in whether you rent there or not. It doesn't affect them. And that allows them to give you unbiased, unvarnished information about their experience living in that community. Do the property management people actually respond to maintenance requests? Are they easy to work with? What is the neighborhood actually like? What is their experience? So sometimes when you take a tour of a property, the leasing agent will point out the park at the end of the street or the restaurant that's available nearby. But the second source of information is actually touring that neighborhood, going down to that park and seeing if that playground is somewhere where you would actually let your child play.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, actually take that tour at night as well, because if you'll be using street parking for at any time, you'll want to know if street parking is readily available, like the leasing agent said, or if I'm going to have to hike 10 blocks in
Mm-hmm.
because it's so congested.
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Justin, your framework mentioned reducing rent. What are the
Yes.
most effective yet often overlooked negotiation levers a renter can pull besides just asking a lower monthly price?
Yeah. I mean, asking is easy, but actually being able to negotiate is where the book really kind of digs into this. So when you go and look for a property, there's a phrase that you'll hear very often. Our rents are competitive with the marketplace. It
Mhm.
sounds like they've done all the research for you. You can't find a better deal than the one that's being presented to you. But that phrase doesn't actually mean what you think it means. What that phrase means and what they've done is they've looked at nearby properties that they consider to be their competitors, and they've chosen their pricing based on that. Whereas, kind of this property might be a half hour west of your job. There's a whole bunch of properties east of your job that you might consider living in that they haven't even looked at. Getting information about those properties and bringing that to the table when you're negotiating with them is bringing them information that they don't have. It's live, real world um, marketing information that's available, places that you would actually rent, and you're basically informing them of who their competition really is. Um, in addition to that, if you are in any way handy as far as being able to repair things and that kind of situation, then you may actually consider possibly working for the landlord. And that may be part-time. And basically you're just being a good neighbor. You're the first point of contact when your neighbors have a repair that needs to be made. You let vendors in. You may pick up trash at the front of the property to make sure the property looks good all the time. You may clean the pool that might happen to be on the property. It's those kinds of things. Um, but when you think about it from the landlord's point of view, if they're going to have a vendor come to the property or if they're going to repair something, they need to get 3 quotes. They need to be there to let the vendor in. They need to be there again to let the vendor actually do the repair. And all of this takes time and money out of their pocket. But if there's somebody who lives there who can provide that service to them, they're willing to pay for that because it makes their lives a lot easier. Um, Another thing that people don't typically think about is the timing of when they go to rent. So during the rental season, usually late spring and summer, there are all kinds of people out there looking for a place to live.
Yes.
But when you fast forward a little bit into the late fall and winter, almost nobody's looking for a place to live. But there are still vacancies that happen. And because of the nature of the business where landlords are trading, it's a time-based service. So if a property is vacant, they don't make any money, and there's no way they have to recoup that rental amount.
Hey, it's Howie Mandel, and I am inviting you to witness history as me and my Howie Do It gaming team take on Gilly the King and Wallow 267's $1 million gaming in an epic global gaming league video game showdown. 4 rounds, multiple games, 1 winner, plus a halftime performance by multi-platinum artist Travie McCoy. Watch all the action and see who wins and advances to the championship match against Neo right now at globalgamingleague.com. That's globalgamingleague.com. Everybody games.
So they're being pushed by the nature of their business to rent a property as soon as possible. And when a vacancy occurs during the late fall and into the winter, they still want to rent that. They're not going to wait until next spring to rent that. And if you come to rent at that time, you may actually be able to negotiate lower rent. So there's been studies that have shown that depending on what apartment you're renting and the city that you're in, that discount may be as much as 7%.
Mr. Justin, walk us through a real example. What does a compelling professional renter's proposal or negotiation script look like for, say, asking for upgrade or a 2-year lease at a discounted rate?
Yeah, so you can. So when you approach the landlord, it's important to not just the actual script, but have all your documentation ready, proof of income, and proof of employment, um, and being able to complete the application in a timely manner, and have your security deposit actually ready when you complete the application. So many people have lost apartments because they didn't have all this documentation and they weren't ready to proceed. That being said, when you mentioned the 2-year lease, a 2-year lease may be one way to reduce your rent, but it's also possible that that lease may actually be shorter than the standard year also. So what landlords are trying to do is time their leases so they don't all expire at the same time. So when you go into talk to a landlord and you mentioned the script, what things you want to ask for are, you want to ask about all of the vacant apartments they may have. Because what's going to happen is you're going to go in and they're going to ask you what you want. They're going to ask you if you want a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment. They're going to ask you if you want it to be on the first or second floor. They're going to ask you if you want to be near the pool. Well, as you're answering these questions, what the leasing agent is doing is crossing off vacant apartments from their list because they're looking for the one that fits your needs. And you get through that process, they get down to the one, and they're like, great, we have one apartment available. What time can you get here? And now you as a renter feel like, oh my God, there's only one. I need to hurry up and get there. But by asking about all the vacant apartments they have available, that gets you out of that, fear of missing out, that scarcity mindset, which is the best place to start. Because that scarcity mindset can drive you to add value in your mind to the apartment that's available. Whereas valuing it appropriately based on the fact that there may be 5 or 10 apartments available.
Interesting script, Mr. Justin. For renters who feel stuck in a subpar living situation but cannot afford to move immediately, what are the highest impact value adds they can advocate for and create themselves?
So substandard living situations typically have to do with pest control, the neighbors that they have that may be making too much noise. So those situations are things that the landlord should be handling for them to improve the situation that they're living in now. If the landlord is not handling those situations, what I recommend people doing is we'll take the pest control for example, documenting what's actually happening in their apartment with pictures and video. And then you basically write a letter forwarding that information to the landlord in writing. Don't do it over the phone. Don't do it verbally because there's no record. There's no paper trail. So email or written letter. And you may do it the first time. They don't respond. When you send it a second time, in the subject line, put second request. And they may or may not respond to that. And then the third time you send it, put third request. Okay. And that way you're creating a paper trail and you're showing that it's the same issue. It's not a new issue. And you can escalate it from the property manager who's on site to the regional manager. and then escalate up beyond that. And sometimes these situations actually get to a court situation, and that's where the paper trail really becomes important, because the paper trail shows you've documented the problem, you've given them adequate time to respond, and they have chosen not to respond. And that places you in a much better leverage situation if you get down to a court situation. What most people do is they wait until they can't stand the situation that's occurring, and then they make a phone call, which leaves no paper trail, and you're already at your wit's end, and you're tired of dealing with this. The key is to start before you get to your wit's end. And that way you have time to go through the process, not just chronological time, but emotional time to deal with the situation the way it needs to be dealt with.
Interesting, Mr. Justin. So, as a founder as well as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
So, my long-term goal is to actually get this information into the hands of renters, and that will help allow us to get out of this conflict between renters and landlords. Politicians have let's say they have an incentive to pit landlords and renters against each other, because that provides an opportunity for them to come in and provide solutions for people. But ultimately, renters and landlords are two sides of the same coin. They need each other. Renters are never going to build a house for themselves to live in, and landlords are investing in property for their retirement. And so renters are literally living in their retirement. So as I say, they're two sides of the same coin, and they actually need each other. And if they can each have a mindset that helps them work together, that will be better for everyone. And that's my ultimate goal.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Justin, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
For people who want to be real estate investors, I would say it's definitely doable. And most people, before they do their first investment, they have this feeling in the pit of their stomach, like it's difficult. And what I would say is the butterflies in your stomach will never disappear until you do that first deal. And yes, there are things that can go wrong, and there's plenty of stories about that. But there are ways to solve those problems. Other people have done it, and you could do it too.
Yes, people, you can do it too, for sure. Thank you for that advice, Mr. Justin. And can you please recommend a book or books that influenced your journey?
So, two books that have influenced my journey are Acres of Diamonds by Napoleon Hill. And basically the premise is you have more resources available to you than you actually know. And the other one is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Interesting recommended books, Mr. Justin. So, zooming out, if more renters adopted this empowered, community-minded approach, how could it positively change the broader rental housing market and landlord-tenant dynamics?
So it would ultimately make being a landlord a lot easier. If renters are looking at the landlord as a partner and not as an adversary, and they're looking for ways to help their landlords make the properties better, then that makes it easier to be a landlord. That means more people will invest in real estate. That means that real estate that will help drive down the cost of renting real estate, because as more people invest in it, there'll be more housing, and that will help bring down, there'll be greater supply, and that will help bring down the cost of housing. And that results in a win for the renter also. So it's a very symbiotic relationship between renters and landlords. But that would be the ultimate benefit.
Well, very well said, Mr. Justin. What advice would you give to a young person about to rent their first apartment that has nothing to do with the apartment itself and everything to do with the mindset and community?
Yeah. So as people are thinking about their first living situation, it's important to think about not just the apartment or the neighborhood, but also what else am I signing up for along with that? So usually a young person is deciding between two jobs in two different cities. Well, let's think about what is are there different taxes, state taxes that I'll have to pay? Is the sales tax different? Is there a city income tax that I'll have to deal with? So these are things that are beyond the actual apartment that they'll have to actually be dealing with. And if you go in with the mindset of the landlord is my partner, then you open yourself up to the possibility of, like I mentioned earlier, possibly working for the landlord or working with the landlord, being that first point of contact for their neighbors, and that can allow you to get reduced rent. Or if, say, you graduate in the spring and you maybe do something temporary, so then you can look for apartments in the late fall and winter, then that can set you up for savings later on. But if you think the landlord is your adversary and you're at the mercy of landlords all the time, then you're not actually going to consider these other potential options.
Very well said, Mr. Justin. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in 6th season, abstract poetry in 3rd season, and my book 101 review in 6th season as well, comedy 101 in 3rd season, and my food 101 in 6th season 2, geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 in 5th season, science 101, sex 101 in 4th season, trivia 101, law 101, mental health 101, motivation 101, and of course my Bible verses 101 are my baby podcasts. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Justin, finally, imagine a world where rental secrets are common knowledge. What does the world look like for renters, for landlords, and for the health of our neighborhoods?
We would actually have healthier neighborhoods with well-maintained buildings. We would not have this animosity between renters and landlords, and that emotional energy can be put towards solving other issues and problems that we face as a society. And people would actually be able to afford the housing that they need to really be the foundation for what they're trying to accomplish in life.
Well, Mr. Justin, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you want to promote on Book 101?
Yeah, so people can actually find Rental Secrets on Amazon.com. They can also take a look at the rentalsecrets.net website for additional resources. And we do post tips for renters on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Justin Pogue, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering books like this to rise, more and more empowering advocacy to implemented. So, Mr. Justin, I have one more question. Let's talk about fairness. What are the most critical but commonly misunderstood clauses in its standard lease agreement that renters must understand and protect themselves and get value.
Yeah, so let's talk about the security deposit. So typically people will leave 1 month's rent as a security deposit. And the security deposit is there to cover damages to the apartment that should occur. Since most renters aren't aware of how the security deposit should be used, that opens up the possibility to abuse and a lack of fairness in how the security deposit is applied. So one thing that renters need to be aware of is that your carpet, for instance, has what's called a useful life from an accounting standpoint. And that useful life starts from when it was installed, not from when you moved in. So if the carpet is more than 5 years old and your security deposit and money is deducted from your security deposit to repair or replace that carpet, that's something that renters should actually question, because the useful life of that carpet is completed after about 5 years. And they should not be charging you for that. But that's something that's not common knowledge.
Well, Mr. Justin, thank you so much for your time, and looking forward for more episodes to come.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Monica people, see you soon.